but you have to determine, and again, I think it does directly relate to how fast you want to recoup that cash. For us, we have a criteria when it comes to ROI.
Hey, welcome back to the Amazing Freedom Amazon Seller Podcast. I am fresh back from being over at Andy's house last week, actually for a couple days, doing our annual planning. We spent a good 3 solid days carving out time in the busy schedule to really look at 2023, which is difficult to do, to take the time to basically take a whole week off and do that. But I thought it went really, really well, and we got a lot accomplished. Andy, what did you think of our annual planning session overall?
Yeah, it was exciting. So those of you that are listening to our podcast, we've been building this brand for 4 to 5 years now. And this was our first in-person team yearly planning retreat that we had. So that was exciting, being that it was the first time. And then I think being in person, there's definitely different energy, and very excited about the things that we got on paper for goals and for plans for 2023.
Yeah, and so we spent a good solid 2 days just on our brand, and then we spent kind of half a day on the third day looking at the arbitrage business that we've been talking about the last couple months on the podcast. And so in this episode, we just want to break down some of the most important goals that we're looking at heading into 2023. We won't go through everything, but want to spend a few minutes on the brand side of things. What are some of the most important areas we want to focus on? And then the arbitrage side of separate side of our business. And when we went through this annual planning, we were actually following the EOS model. So we've talked about it on the podcast before, but there's a great operating system called the Entrepreneur Operating System by Gino Wickman, and there's a couple books around it, Traction and Get a Grip. And so I know even just hearing you say that, Andy, like spending the first time that we've done this and spending time on it, I think one of the reasons we've never done it before is because it's kind of intimidating, and you feel like if you don't have a really good set agenda to do something like this, you might just be wasting time and money and energy coming together and not really accomplishing a whole lot. But by following the EOS system, they have literally the exact kind of step-by-step way to hold an annual planning session for the 2 days. I felt like it made it very, very clear, and we were able to come away with accomplishing exactly what we set out with it. So that was super helpful. And if you're hesitant for that reason, I definitely suggest going through that book and looking at that system, and it might help you overcome that. So first off, let's look at the brand. We'll start that, and then we'll go into the arbitrage. Let's just look at what are some of the main areas. We won't go through all of them, but main things we want to focus on next year. And the first one, this is our very first time that we actually have had an annual forecast budget for the whole year. If you've been listening to the show, you know that we set out to do a $10 million challenge at the beginning of 2022 for the brand to sell over $10 million on Amazon, which we were able to hit in December. But that was kind of just a guess, a shot in the dark, right, Andy? We kind of just were throwing it out there that we thought we could do that without a whole lot of science or data behind it, except for our intuition, which was thankfully pretty accurate. But this year we're doing it differently. We have a CFO and a true CFO in the company now. And Steve put together a full 2023 forecasted plan that actually shows month by month per SKU how much we plan to sell. Of course, it's just an estimate, it's just a guess, but it still helps dial it in and be able to peg against something throughout the year. So maybe just walk us through what that was like, Andy, kind of seeing that for the first time, and then what that also means for our 2023 goal of revenue.
Yeah. So, believe it or not, if you've been listening, you've heard this, but we've sold over $10 million for 2 years in a row. Actually, with this year now, that's 3 years. And, we never really had a formalized yearly budget. So most companies at that level, every year, they're going to take time and they're going to create that budget. And this was really one of the first times that we were able to do that. Now, thankfully, we have experience now in the Amazon ecosystem. So we're getting pretty good at forecasting and, predicting what our sales are going to be on Amazon, as well as our own Shopify store. So we're able to go off of kind of past history and experience, which helped us in doing that. And so, yeah, it was really exciting to be able to look at and see how are we going to get the revenue increase. It also was a little scary because in laying everything out right in that kind of manner at a yearly retreat, you also see the gaps. And so, for us, we have goals of hitting 15 million. Yet, as we looked at our current product mix, I think, Nate, correct me if I'm wrong, there were some questions like, oh, are we going to be able to hit that goal with our current product mix? And I think this is what analyzing and coming together in a retreat like this is able to do.
Yeah, so our official forecast does not have us at 15 million. We've actually pulled it back. And part of that's because, just looking at the economy, the macro environment, we've talked about this on the show, but 2023 looks like it could be, there's a lot of unknowns heading into 2023. And so we've pulled back a lot of our forecasts, trying to be conservative. So what was originally a 15 million potential we felt like we could get to was now dialed back. And so we're quite a bit under that. So that's what we're doing for our official forecast. However, you and me still kind of have this 15 million number close that in our head. And so the gap there is where we basically need a lot of new products if we want to be able to get that, to achieve that. And so I think it's still possible. Because our current product mix is basically showing one number, and we would need to have probably a couple $1 million of extra revenue, which is obviously no small feat. But I also think we've done similar stuff the past couple of years as well. So that leads us to our next point. Number one was just looking at our revenue forecast versus our internal goal. The second thing we said in 2023 we need to do in order to, one, achieve the forecast, but then also this kind of stretch goal that we have is to launch a bunch of new products. And the number that we set, Andy, a little aggressive, is 40 new products. So maybe just walk us through that number of trying to launch 40 new products in 2023.
Yeah, so for us to be able to really hit that goal as we've dug into the business, we were able to see like our success in 2022 was because we launched a number of new products. And so they were the ones that really generated and drove a lot of the newer revenue. In addition to that, and if you've sold on Amazon for any amount of time, you'll know this, current products that you have this year, or maybe current products that you have today, they may not be your top 10 products in 2023. Maybe, it's your top 8 revenue generator or profit generator. 2023, that could drop off to being your 12th best revenue generator. And so because there's always a flow of, moving up and down on what your top, really that's the 80-20 rule, what your top 20% of your products driving 80% of your revenue, you always have to be adding new products to increase overall revenue, but also possibly to make up for those products that may be dropping in revenue, right? And so I think getting together, we were able to see that. And so, coming up with that number of 40, which is pretty aggressive for us in the size team that we are, was a very good reach goal to say, hey, let's launch 40 brand new products in 2023.
Yeah. And so a lot of the products that did well for us in 22 are products that we had launched in 2021, actually, right? That we've talked about before. And that's the other challenge is you got to be looking out quite a bit to sometimes see the return on the investment you're doing with all this. And so to get really to our 3-year goal is what we think launching 40 this year is really important. So yeah, that's number 2 is launching 40 products. And then number 3, a big thing we said was we really felt like we needed to hire an operations manager. So we've talked about on the show this year, we made a big decision to bring in a COO to the company who is Steve, and he's currently holding both the COO/CFO title, and he's doing a great job, but he's definitely has a lot on his plate, especially with trying to get to this stretch revenue goal that we have and trying to launch 40 new products, as you've already mentioned, Andy. And so bringing in a operations manager that could take a lot of the day-to-day tasks off his plate, but still allow him to do more of the strategic outlook of the operations and the finance team is something really important. And maybe just speak to that as far as kind of just some of the workload that we've seen creep up this year and anticipate in the future.
Yeah, the work that he's doing right now, currently occupying both seats, it really is, amazing to see, and so thankful to be able to have him there. but the decision to bring him on has been fantastic for us in freeing us up to do other parts of the business that really need attention in order to scale. So you've heard us talk about it before. The only way that we are going to scale and reach our goal of becoming a $150 million company is we have to have amazing superhero team members who are part, right, of that success. And Steve has been a huge part of that. And so now looking at being able to bring someone on that I think probably will ultimately report to him as well is going to free him up to continue to do what he's doing great at. He has multiple roles right now. He's also the CFO, and he's also doing a lot of great work with supplier relations and specifically with our US domestic supplier and building a relationship there, cultivating new products with that supplier. So he's really multi-talented. And so that's always for me, as we build our team, it's always looking at what are some of the strengths and talents of those team members? What do they really enjoy doing? How can we take less off their plate to really let them do what they're strong at, what they're gifted to do, and really what gives them energy? Because that is ultimately what I think rocket ships, right, your company.
Yeah, and what I would say to that is over the last couple of years, I feel like we've probably spent the majority of our time more on the marketing aspects of the business, which I think as entrepreneurs is both a just kind of natural strength and really just what you need, right? We've talked about this before, when you're getting to $1 million and even going from 1 to 10 million, you just got to focus on bringing lots of new products in and marketing them well. But what happens along the way is your operations start to just get crazy. And we've seen that happen where, you're missing stuff. Oversight just isn't there. And then the systems are kind of like Band-Aid patches on top of each other. And so what we're saying here is basically Steve's made this a lot better, but now bringing an operations manager will help kind of just tighten this up even further. And on that note, again, kind of leads us into point number 4 here. Another big goal we have for the brand is to add 6 new channels to the brand. The reason we came up with 6 was because we've been working with the software and a couple of people that it looks like 6 should be a pretty easy kind of clear number that we can get to. We already have these channels laid out. So we want to add these 6 new channels. But again, like we've been saying, that adds a lot of operation complexity every time you add in a new channel. So maybe just speak to that and tie up kind of the brand planning for 2023, Andy.
Yeah, for us, we want to continue to diversify as much as possible, even though Amazon still is the main channel for us to sell in. We want to continue to grow our own website, which is on Shopify, and we want to try to penetrate these other marketplaces with our products. And the challenge has been it is time consuming to upload listings, to track that inventory. If you can imagine like a big octopus with all its tentacles going out different places. Well, that's what happens when you start adding in all of these channels. I think we currently sell on 5 right now, and it becomes a challenge for our folks in the warehouse. And we've been doing this all manually, really. We use ShipStation. ShipStation's amazing, but it is not the best, right, for multi-channel fulfillment. So we want to add these other channels. And then at the same time, we want to add some really good software that's going to help us manage and maintain the amazing amount of inventory that we have now selling, $11 to $15 million a year.
Yeah, so I mean that's kind of a high level look at what we went through, and we did a lot of specific quarterly planning and issues solving last week at Andy's house. But it was a good time. And again, if you have a brand and you aren't doing some form of annual or quarterly planning, definitely recommend it and check out the EOS system. I feel like it's really helping us to be more confident in our planning and going forward. While I was there, Andy, we also spent half a day getting together with our arbitrage team. So we have a couple shoppers and people looking at the arbitrage business that we now have a full quarter under our belt. It's kind of hard to believe that it's been a full quarter now at this point. So walk us through kind of what you thought the importance of getting together in person with that team was, and what you're seeing as the most important things heading into 2023 for what is a much more newer and a more flexible business at the moment, because we're just getting into it kind of just recently.
Yeah, so we'll just rip through some kind of nuts and bolts things that we've been rediscovering. So you and I lived in the arbitrage world for many years before we were brand building, and this stuff was second nature. But now, as we are kind of getting back into the space, we're remembering things that we, used to do. And so, one of the things we did when we first started getting into the account is looking at aged inventory. And so, we really want to have a high turn rate on our retail online arbitrage business. We believe that it is a cash flow generating machine if it's run properly. And one of the ways it has to be run is that it has to be lean and mean. And so we want to be able to purchase inventory. We want to, get it out the door in 24 hours. And we want to sell that inventory at Amazon FBA within 90 days. And so we are keeping now a tight watch on the age inventory. If you have an Amazon account, this should be something that you look at on a weekly basis. Something you need to think through with your team or with your business is how long do you want to let your inventory sit at Amazon FBA? We know that now Amazon is changing the long-term storage fees. So it used to be at a year you would get hit with a penalty, and now it is 6 months, unless it is apparel and shoes. I think they are giving a reprieve on apparel and shoes. Everything else, though, if it's in there longer than 6 months, in addition to your normal storage rates, you are going to get penalized with a 6-month long-term storage rate. And that's really minimal in our minds, because the main thing to turn inventory is, we think that a fast nickel is better than a slow dime. And so we want to really burn and churn and get that inventory sold in 90 days. And it's something that if you have an Amazon business, you really need to look at and think about.
Yeah. And that's something that we're getting really aggressive on our repricing. And we've talked about that the last couple episodes, so I won't get into it, but I definitely recommend going back, listening to that. We did an episode kind of on 4 or 5 things that we're doing there. Next thing we looked at, Andy, was our buying criteria. So I know this is something that everybody has a unique strategy on, but maybe just talk to what you think are some of the most important areas to always kind of be refocusing on to make sure that you're in the right place.
Yep. So again, just getting real nuts and bolts. If you're using a scanning app like Scan Power or Inventory Lab, when you scan that barcode, what are you looking for a minimum ROI? Are you looking for 70%? Are you looking for 60%? So that's one thing you always want to think about, right? The second thing is, what ranks are you going for? Are you comfortable in clothing purchasing a product that has a 200,000 rank? Or do you really, in looking at Keepa, do you really want to keep your buys at 50,000 and under? Again, it's your business, so it's your choice, but you have to determine. And again, I think it does directly relate to how fast you want to recoup that cash on what your criteria is going to be for buying. For us, we have a criteria when it comes to ROI. We have a criteria when it comes to ranking. And so, those are some things, those are probably the 2 biggest things when it comes to buying criteria that we've really been discussing and thinking through with our team members.
Yeah, so we updated our buying criteria with our shoppers, and then we also went through new store locations and routes to hit, and we got tactical and saying like, hey, what if you focus your time over here, 3 days a week, and we let Andy's son do something a different day, right? And so we got real tactical like that. And the challenge there, Andy, is just that we've given our buyers buy targets per week, how much we want them to buy. And every time you switch something like your buying criteria you just went through, where we lowered our BSR in some cases, we tightened the buy costs that we allowed certain categories to be between, but that makes it difficult for a shopper or a Amazon seller in general to then hit those buy targets just because it changes. So maybe speak to that in the routes, locations, and what that means heading into the new year, trying to get those buy targets.
Yeah, the routes and the location one is one that needs a lot of strategy behind, and it's really dependent on where you are. If you live in a city or in a suburb of a major city, you're probably going to have a lot more opportunities to shop. And what we're talking about specifically here is retail arbitrage. We have a shopper that goes out every day. We're in more of a rural location, central Pennsylvania. The largest city near us is Philadelphia, which is an hour and 45 minutes away. And so he has to be very strategic when he's driving, because sometimes he'll be on the road, during his day for 3 to 3.5 hours. So that's a lot of time. Every hour, right? Every minute that he's on the road means that it's a minute he's not spent scanning and purchasing inventory. Whereas, if I'm in my location of where I grew up, Aurora, Illinois, suburb of Chicago, about 30 miles out, there are within a 15-minute drive, tons of opportunities to be able to do retail arbitrage. And so my road time is going to be a lot less. So I say all that to say that he has to be very strategic on the stores that he's going to hit, and he's got to come up with a really good route to maximize his buying time. That's what it comes down to. He has to really maximize his buying time. So we've really been working with him, right, on coming up with the strategy like that.
I'd be ripping through a lot of audiobooks and podcasts if I was on the road for 3 hours a day. But yeah, it's a real challenge to get that right. All right. Last thing that we're really excited about heading into 23 is trying to create our own unique listings on Amazon with branded products. And Andy, heading into or buying into this arbitrage and starting to do arbitrage again, this is probably the number one reason that we were excited to get back into Amazon. So maybe just speak to this and how you've been bullish on this opportunity for a long time for arbitrage sellers.
So we really think, and there are a number of Amazon sellers that sell millions of dollars every year, very profitable. And basically what they sell are branded bundles. And so they've been able to track down and get distributor level pricing. They've been able to get sources where they can get items in bulk, and then they bundle them on Amazon, and it becomes really their own unique listing. So very similar to what folks do with private label. However, they have the power of the name brand. And so, whether it's, I'm just trying to think of a name brand like Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is a huge, well-recognized brand, right? And if you're able to, sell Coca-Cola on Amazon, probably some do unique, flavors or something, you're able to utilize that search term that a lot of customers put in Amazon. And so we really think that as we continue to do what we're doing, because you just can't stop, right, the cash flow machine of online and retail arbitrage, but we really want to work with our team so that they can become more creative to create these unique listings that we will brand with a brand that we come up with. That way we're not sharing the buy box. We don't have to set a repricer on that listing because we will be the only seller on that listing. And the whole idea is you have to give value to the customer. So customers, again, are searching and they are buying millions of dollars of Kellogg cereal on Amazon, right? And so, what could you do to offer value to those customers by bundling some type of Kellogg cereal? I know that's, probably not a good idea to put out there because it wouldn't work. But I just want to get folks to understand the idea of bundling name brands and the power that brings. So we think that our team is going to be able to do that. And that's the ultimate goal, is that we have 50 to 75 listings by the end of the year, where these are our unique listings, piggybacking on the power of these brand names.
Yeah, so much opportunity there. And obviously, with our own private label experience, this is something that we're confident in. But it's really, if you are looking into private label or want to do private label eventually, you've said for a long time, Andy, this is your preferred way to be like a stepping stone to get there and get the experience needed. So I want to shout out, as we wrap up, a milestone for us personally. In the last about year and a half to 2 years that AMZ Pro has been helping us with our brand, just got the report today that we've crossed over a $100,000 reimbursement amount that AMZ Pro personally has gotten back for our brand. So that's not just all the money that Amazon has automatically given back to us, but this is money AMZ Pro has personally got back for us, and a 25% fee that some would charge would be $25,000 there. But it's just a low monthly flat fee to AMZ Pro. So to see that 6-figure reimbursement amount is pretty crazy, but it's a cool number to see going up every single month. And check out AMZ Pro, AMZProfessional.com. If you aren't currently doing your reimbursements, this time of the year at the end of Q4 is the most important time. You got Returnuary coming up, and you got Amazon just hectic in the Q4 warehouse. this is when we see kind of the most reimbursement potential right after Q4, kind of January, February timeframe. And you only have 9 months for shipments, 18 months for your lost and damage and such. So make sure you get that taken care of. And overall, Andy, I'll just say that, I'm super happy that we did our annual planning. It was, again, an investment of a couple days and traveling and planning and all that, but it really sets us up good for next year. And if you're a listener to the podcast heading into the 2023 year and you have something specifically you want us to talk about, go to amazingfreedom.com, sign up to be an insider. And when you sign up, you'll start getting a couple emails from us. You can just reply to one of those and let us know what you want to hear about in the show in the new year, what's going to be the most valuable to you. Otherwise, hopefully that branding and arbitrage recap of our goals for next year is helpful. And Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Amazing Freedom Amazon Seller Podcast. See ya.